today. No, I can't sing the U.S. national anthem. It's impossible to hit those notes. A little bit wobbly today, so I apologize. As many of you know, my retirement in part was due to some health issues that I need to get worked out, and some days I don't have great neurological days. Having one of those today, but hopefully we'll get through this, and I will admit that I have the courage to follow Anson. And Bonnie Caver, you won the bet. I was in tears before I ever started, but I've got a large stack here. I want to first thank everybody who had anything with putting this on. I know it was a lot of work. Steve Kirshner particularly, Kathy Griggs, people at the Rams Club who put this together. I'm just very, very moved, and I want to thank you for everything and getting this put together. This may look long. I promise it won't be as long as it looks. I want to start by saying a big thank you to all of you for being here. I know how many of you have traveled immensely long distances at great expense to be here. And I assure you that that level of kindness is not lost on me. I am thoroughly gobsmacked by all the support in this room. I even would call it love. I want to specifically thank Mrs. Mary Harrion, who unfortunately could not be here today. She was hoping to come. Four of her children were here. She's 93 years young, and she was planning to come. And more than 40 years ago, the Harrion family, Dr. John Harrion, longtime professor of medicine here at Carolina, hosted a party for me at their house in Chapel Hill after I'd gotten a full-time job in Carolina. So although Mary wasn't able to be here today, it's the ultimate compliment that 4 of her 5 kids were able to be here. And if John Jr., not Junior, but John II, weren't such a workaholic, maybe he would have been here too. But my relationship with that family really goes the ultimate 360 full circle, and they mean so much to me. Most people only get one chance at making a retirement speech, and I certainly plan to stick to that. So I want to make the most of my opportunity to say a few things and hopefully to impart some wisdom and maybe even entertain you a little bit. In looking back, I fully believe I was born at the exact right moment in time to have a long-standing career in college sports information, a profession that I have loved. I got into the profession at a time when it was expanding, and I am leaving it at a time in which I can enjoy retirement, and I do very much so far, and still be young enough to contribute in various roles in the future in a freelance way. So much of what I am as a person was shaped by the decisions my parents, Clark and Lorraine, made for me and my sisters when I was a young kid growing up in Griffith, Indiana. We were the quintessential post-World War II working class family growing up in the shadow of Chicago. I was born smack dab in the middle of the baby boomer era in 1955. From the earliest age I can remember, I was fascinated by movies and TV shows which were set in college town settings, including a very obscure mid-1960s TV show on NBC that lasted one season. It was called Hank, and Hank ran a food truck on a college campus and snuck into classes part-time to get his education, and the whole thing was never to get caught. I watched every episode of that show. I was probably 9 years old, and all I could think about was going to college. And beginning at 8 or 9, having those fantasies about wanting to be on college campuses, it never occurred to me that all these years later, I never left a college campus. I just stuck around. Couldn't get rid of me. I was really a lucky boy. It was July the 2nd, 1963, when my parents took me to my first game at Wrigley Field. I was smitten with the sports bug immediately. In 1964, my parents let me dominate the sole TV set in the house to watch the Winter Olympics in Innsbruck and the Summer Olympics in Tokyo, where I fell in love with the sports of figure skating and swimming. Yes, some stereotypes about gay guys are totally true. Speaking of stereotypes, I also caught the show tunes bug at a very young age. My parents took me into the city to see the first national tour of Oliver at the Schubert Theater in Chicago in 1964. And a year later, we went to premiere week of the movie of The Sound of Music in the city, as well as to see Carol Channing in the first ever national tour of Hello Dolly. I was hooked. When my parents bought me my first phonograph, they let me loose in EJ Corvettes, a precursor to the Kmart, Walmart sort of thing, in a town called Matson, Illinois. And they said, come back with the album you want the most. I returned with the soundtrack to the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical Oklahoma. My folks had to know. They had a weird kid on their hand. I didn't get the Beatles. I didn't even get, I don't know, any of the British bands from there. I got Oklahoma. I loved growing up where I grew up and going to high school where I prospered as a basketball manager and a journalism advisor, Pat Clark's nationally prominent high school media program at Griffith Senior High School. I was always a public school kid from the get-go. I also freelanced with 3 local newspapers writing sports when I was in high school, and I loved it. I used to get $6 a story for covering a basketball game on a Friday night. $6, which basically got killed off at Burger King on the way home. While I had the chance to go to several small liberal arts colleges in the Midwest with good scholarship offers, I wanted a Big Ten education. My older sister had gone there, and for years I had dreamed about being somewhere with big dormitories, huge campus quads, fantastic fall days, and cold nights spent in Mackey Arena with ear-splitting decibel levels. I fondly remember the Boilermakers winning the NIT title my freshman year, when winning the NIT title was a really big deal. By the way, the team they beat in the first round that year was North Carolina. I didn't know where life would have taken me had I not read an ad in the Purdue Exponent student newspaper in August 1974, advertising for a student assistant position in the Boilermakers Sports Information Office. There was only one opening, and I apparently impressed SID legend Ted Harris enough to get the job, which I loved as much as my academics for the next 3 years. And trust me, I was one of those nerdy kids who was into school. I loved going to school. One of my fondest memories of my time in the office was being assigned to get Bo Schembechler's coach's quotes after Purdue had upset and undefeated a #1 ranked Michigan football team in November of 1976 at Ross-Ade Stadium. Let me assure you, it took forever for Bo to get to the press conference. So much so that I reported back up to the press conference and said, he still hasn't gotten there. And they said, go back down, go back down. And he eventually did show. A year later, I was off to Chapel Hill to attend graduate school. It was always my first choice for grad school. I had fallen in love with the Tar Heels years earlier, reading about Dean Smith's basketball teams in Sports Illustrated. And my first campus visit in 1975 left me totally in love with a college town and a university. I was so fortunate that SID legend Rick Brewer hired me to work part-time in the office while I was in grad school, and then entrusted me with his sole full-time position as an assistant SID in 1979 when my dear friend, and fellow Boilermaker Karen Crokeisler left Carolina to go to Notre Dame to continue her career. I've never taken a day of the past 4+ decades for granted. My first assignment was to cover Anson Dorrance's first game as the head men's soccer coach on September 10th, 1977. About 41 years after that, I covered his 1,000th combined win in 2018. 800 plus with the women, 172 with the men. 828 at that time with the women, 172. Why do I remember that? I remember Phil Ford's senior day game in Carmichael against Duke in 1978 like it was yesterday. He had 34 points. It's one of the 2 greatest college basketball games I've ever seen in person. I will always remember Amos Lawrence's mad dash up the middle with no timeouts left, an 11-yard rush with less than 10 seconds to play to beat Duke in 1978. Sorry, Art Chase. And a year later, the Gator Bowl win over Lohse in Michigan, and the excitement of that night in Jacksonville in December of 1979. The early 1980s were incredibly special with lacrosse championships and undefeated seasons in back-to-back years in 1981 and 1982. The special throw-it-away-to-worthy moment in the Superdome in 1982. And Anson's first 4 women's soccer national championships from 1981 through 1984. First 4, as in he has won 22 of them. I enjoyed so many national championships and ACC championships in so many different sports through the years. They're almost too numerous to mention. I treasure the titles, national titles in field hockey, men's soccer, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, and the other sports as much as I found the ultimate elation of basketball crowns in 82, 93, 05, 09, 2017. You can't grow up as a kid in Hoosier State without basketball being your first love. Through it all, I appreciate the winning, but it was always about the people for me. Can I get a second? The cadre of wonderful co-workers in the SID office, the coaches at Carolina, the sports information student assistants. Those friendships were always the best. Even more so, I exulted in the relationships with the student athletes. So many of those people are still friends to this day, and I keep regular contact with so many of them on the social media that I both hate and love. Can someone turn off my phone? In recent years, I've continued to love every minute of this gig, even after the profession has changed so much and duties have evolved, and I've slowed down physically, I know. Heather O'Reilly's monster Final Four to win the women's soccer title in 2006. Kaylia Ohai's double overtime goal off the post in 2012 to beat Stanford. In the national semifinals in 2012. And the 2016 NCAA Lacrosse Final Four weekend, when the women and the men won 2 titles in 24 hours. All of this so special to me. I will never forget the overtime call of that men's lacrosse title. Skip past the Cloutier, it's over! And for the first time in 25 years, we had won a national championship. And it was all followed by me losing all decorum in the Lincoln Financial Field press box with Lena Welch. I definitely need a second for this next one. Paul Connell, I relished the chance to sit in Vivian's spot in the living room of your house. When Chris Bryant slipped, but still got the ball to Anthony Rizzo. In time to win the 2016 World Series for the Cubby Blue. A moment I honestly thought I would never see in my lifetime. For all the love of Purdue and North Carolina, I am most grounded as a Cubs and a Blackhawks fan because those were the ultimate passions of my youth. Growing up right outside Chicago because they were on TV all the time. Patrick Kane's goal to beat the Flyers in 2010 is etched in my memory. We had waited 49 years for that Stanley Cup. And winning in 2013 and 2015 wasn't bad either. I have had so many longtime passions for various things. History, sports, classic movies, books, newspapers, that I don't think I could possibly get bored in retirement. Certainly, my passion for theater will never be satiated. It is in the songs of musical theater that I have always taken the most inspiration. I grew up loving West Side Story and its classic anthem, Somewhere, produced by the brilliant Jerome Robbins, Arthur Lawrence, Leonard Bernstein, and Stephen Sondheim, always gives me goosebumps. Its words are hauntingly beautiful. I highly recommend the Ben Platt version on YouTube from the 2018 Grammys. If you don't know who Ben Platt is, start Googling. My most beloved Broadway musical is Pippin, which ran on Broadway from 1972 to 1978. Unfortunately, I didn't see it during its original run or its original national tour. I waited 43 years for its second national tour to arrive at the Durham Performing Arts Center in 2015. And going on back-to-back nights the week of my 60th birthday with my dear friends Mark Donahue and Angie Bitting was so remarkable. And Mark and I literally could not have had a better time than we did at the cast party after the first night performance, which I think that party's still going on. We were certainly there until Tyler's kicked us out. Pippin is the story of the son of Charlemagne, the French emperor. The musical is themed on Pippin's search for the extraordinary life, a notion he possessed to find fulfillment in his existence. Pippin goes to war, commits patricide, finds the arms of a loving woman for some hanky-panky, in seeking that fulfillment. And in the end, finds that it is the ordinary things in life, lived on a day-to-day basis, that ultimately bring fulfillment. The words to Pippin's anthem, Corner of the Sky, were always the credo I sought to live by since I first heard it in 1972. Wearing out that LP in my corner bedroom in the house on Wigan Street in Griffith, Indiana. It's the third and final verse of Corner of the Sky that daily inspires me all these years later. And now please forgive me. I'm going to try to sing it. So many men seem destined to settle for something small, but I won't rest until I know I'll have it all. So don't ask where I'm going, just listen when I'm gone. And far away you'll hear me singing softly to that dawn. Rivers belong where they can ramble, eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free. Gotta find my corner of the sky. My most profound hope for all of you today is that, like myself, you have found or are in the process of finding your own very fulfilling corner of the sky. Thank you for listening, and hark the sound.